Okay, hello everybody. Today we are thrilled to welcome uh, artist Bryan Brinkman to our show. Hello, Bryan. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good day.
Wonderful. Everybody, my name is Marc Billings. This is our Curated by Blackdove podcast where we interview our top artists on Blackdove and make sure our collective community is getting to meet and greet our incredible artists. And today I'm thrilled to welcome my co-host, Elise Tretherick.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, Bryan. It's been such a pleasure working with you these last few weeks, getting ready for this amazing solo show. And I'm just so excited to speak with you today and learn more about your art. I know a lot about you, but each piece I'm really excited to learn more about and really excited for the show next week. So thanks so much for coming.
Well, it's awesome to be here, and thanks. I'm excited.
So first of all, how did you come up with the logo? I mean, obviously you're iconic, but I have a pin. I should have worn it today. Was that your idea? Was it somebody said, like, how did that all come about?
Well, it goes way back to when I used to make, websites in high school and college. I would always have a little icon in the top corner, and usually I would just doodle a version of myself. And then when I had a new website, I would make a new version. Or if I joined a new social media platform, I'd make a new caricature of me. And so this one, I would say, is probably like the third one I've had on Twitter. And I still occasionally make new ones for random things, but this one is kind of stuck a little longer and eventually got to the point where I minted it because they started having that hexagon logo. And so kind of by default, this one has stuck and become more of a logo than an evolving kind of portrait. But it's always fun to kind of like, as I'm growing older, keep revamping it. So eventually when I lose my hair, it'll be a lot easier to draw them.
So Elise, Bryan and I got to hang out, I think, as you know, in this amazing trip to Dubai and UAE. And it was so much fun because really I didn't know anybody, and we all got to know and spend time with each other.
That's great.
And Bryan, what was your highlight from that trip?
What was the highlight?
Thinking back,
the Louvre was pretty incredible. Both the work in it and the architecture of it was insane. And then going up to the top of that Burj Dubai was pretty insane. I have a fear of heights, so I don't think I can get more scared than that at this point.
Risk it all.
It was really a generous offer that they brought us over there, and it was like a real treat. I love it over there now. I'll be going back for my third time since that trip, so it was like super effective for us. Hopefully you'll come with us for Art Dubai this year. So during that show, Elise, during that trip, like Bryan had me laughing all the time. Okay. And like, I didn't know him at the time. And so I was like, who is this guy? And then finally one night at dinner, we got to sit next to each other. And you started telling me a little bit about your story, which I think is just tremendously interesting to hear about. And walk the community through like your artistic journey. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll try and condense it for time, but I guess I started being creative in an early age, especially with computers, playing with like early graphic software back in the 90s. And through that, I got really excited about sharing art. As the internet grew, I got really excited about like platforms where you could share art. So like early on, there was one called Newgrounds where you could put little animations up and people could comment on it and like it and all this stuff. And that got me hooked on this idea of like creating content and getting reactions from people. So it usually starts out with like goofy cartoons that are funny. But then through that, I went to college to study animation and learn filmmaking. And then, the pieces become a little more thoughtful than just like Warner Brothers level, like cartoonishness. And then, you start to think about more of these like deeper things of like film festival films or like films about life and stuff like that. And so from that point on, I graduated from college in Philadelphia. Went to the University of the Arts, wonderful school. Moved up to New York and started working in any industry that would hire me, essentially. Because when you're an art school kid, you're like, I'll take anything. And so I became kind of a jack of all trades at a lot of places. So I was working in a fashion advertising firm and being their motion graphics person and their website builder and their, everything in it, video research person. Through that, I evolved into working in toy commercials. I went out and worked on animated series out in LA, where I was, everything from an animator to a background artist to a character designer. And then throughout that time, I was also working on music videos and concert posters and anything and everything I could do to be creative. Eventually doing gallery shows out in LA, where I was doing this like kind of monthly singular piece in a group show out in LA for a long time. And then for a long period, I got kind of wrangled into the world of late night television. I was working at the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. I was working at Saturday Night Live doing, again, everything and anything, whether it's the graphics for a bit, a monologue joke, the backgrounds for a music act, the visual effects on a pre-tape for SNL. It's just kind of doing all these like kind of things, and a lot of what I ended up working on revolved around the comedy world. So it was a lot of kind of executing and collaborating with writers. And so that all was my journey. And then during that time, I discovered NFTs back in, December 2019, January 2020. And that put me on this path that has now become a new career.
Were you doing art before that in the form
Well, I
that
was
you see it today?
making animations for like film festivals or music videos. But the traditional kind of art I was making was inspired by animation, where I was creating these kind of three-dimensional cell boxes where I would print out different layers, paint them, and then they become these kind of 3D shadow box scenes. And a lot of those were for these galleries that are kind of pop culture galleries in LA, where it's like, we're doing a Monty Python official art show, and then you do a piece based on Monty Python, or it's a kind of these like inspired by pop culture shows. So that was probably 5 or 6 years of me making art for galleries and just selling these one-off pieces, and kind of honing my skills on the side in that sense. But there was never really a way for me to monetize my skills with animation in a way that I could just sell whatever I made. It was always working for clients or TV shows or kind of executing other people's ideas. So when NFTs came, it became very clear to me, like, there's finally a path for the thing I enjoy making.
Awesome.
What in your art, I find a really interesting color palette. It is that pop. It's that really poppy, bright, beautiful, and joyful color palette that you use. Why do you think that you chose that color palette? Was this something that kind of came from working on so many, pop pieces, that kind of, followed you
Perhaps.
into
I
what
think
you're doing now?
prior to NFTs, I had recently worked on a music video for Sesame Street, so maybe that had like an underlying influence. But I think when I joined the space, I spent time looking at Super Rare and other sites and seeing what the general vibe of the space was. And at the time, it was very grungy and grimy, very glitchy. There was like Sarah Zucker, Coldy, Xcopy, and they make awesome work. But I was like, oh, well, that's that style. I think if I go this direction, I can kind of have a colorful, poppier world and build within that and kind of have a corner that feels more like myself versus me trying to like emulate. So that's kind of where it came about. And then the colors evolved over the course of maybe my first 10 pieces, where the first one had these like color exploding clouds. And then I kind of played around trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the space. Because when I joined, a lot of artists join and they have this like very specific vision of how they want to guide their career. I went in it thinking, oh, this is a new playground to experiment with. And then a couple months later, COVID happened. I was like, I have all the time to experiment. So it was me just kind of saying, I want to play in all these different mediums and styles. How can I do that in a way that doesn't disconnect everything? And for me, it was having that color palette. And so it's, to me, I see it as kind of a candy coating that allows everyone to kind of see it, know it's me, but it doesn't force me into a specific like repetition. And then, and I think a lot of my pieces have kind of a more serious undertone to the meanings, but those colors make it a lot more easier on the eyes and easier for people to kind of swallow. It's like when they put candy coating on the pills you have to swallow to make it easier to go down.
Yeah. Totally. I love that. And that's what I feel when I look at your art. It's there's a lot of undertones of different emotions and feelings, but it's really easy to take in and keep looking at and still be happy and try to find different meaning in
Thank
it
you.
with the colors. So it's beautiful. I love the pieces that you do. So yeah.
Wait, I've got some teed up here, so let me share my screen. Let me see here. Condone.
No problem.
Give me a second.
It's going to be a fun surprise.
Perfect. Exactly. This is one I was on before, and I hadn't seen this work before. Let's let it get loading up again. It's one of those like
I'm not seeing
iconic
it yet.
images in
If you
general.
describe, what does it
You want to
look
walk us
like?
through it?
Oh, traffic jams.
No?
Okay. So
It's
this
traffic
piece was
jams.
more of a, I don't know how to describe it. It was a collaboration, and it was more based on the mechanics and the concept than the work itself. So I worked with a photographer, Rich Caldwell, who's a aerial drone photographer, and he shot this aerial photo of the street because he had seen one of my previous works. Again, going back to my like gallery 3D cell days, I did a piece that was like all these roads intertwining. And he's like, look at this, I think we can do something here. And so I took his image and I basically erased every single car from it and then rebuilt every single car from it. And then I animated every single car from it. And then we wrapped it in this thing called the Shatter Contract, which is by Transient Labs. And so basically we auctioned off a singular NFT, but the owner of that NFT could then shatter it into 16 unique NFTs. And so what you're seeing here is 16 different variations that one NFT became these 16 unique NFTs. And so it was a fun, like, weird way of thinking about, like, giving the owner of the NFT the power to, kind of dilute his own supply. And it ended up getting purchased by the artist Pack, which was really cool. And then he shattered it immediately because he was so excited to see how it worked.
We can't help but break things and see what's inside, right? Kind of thing. I love that. That's what kind of programs before we move into the next one do you typically
Well,
use
that
for
one
your
was
pieces? Like
mostly
that
After
one, what did
Effects for the
you what
animation and the
programs did you use?
compositing, like adding the clouds and the camera shake. But it started with a photograph, and then I brought it into Photoshop, and I, went through brush by brush and removed everything. So it was a little bit of mixed media.
Yeah. Cool. I love it.
Yeah. This is very hard to pronounce name. Automatonomy. Yeah, so this piece I made this year, it was
That's his
I've purposely
sarcasm
made it
coming
very
out.
hard to read.
Okay. You gotta be careful with
It's
him.
kind of wordplay, but it's also jumbles. For this one, I was reached out to by Sotheby's to make a piece for a show this year, and it was a show of like satisfying 3D stuff. And so they kind of were like, what can you make with that? And so the concept behind this piece is the creative process. And I use these kind of gumballs to represent ideas. And you can kind of see how, you think of an idea, you regurgitate it, it goes through this process. You see the ball rolling around. That's me sharing it with people, hitting some writer's block walls, and then going through and spitting out a bunch of variants here and seeing what happens. And then eventually they all kind of recombine, and then you have a finished piece and you kind of work on the next one. And so it's kind of a fun way of taking these like gumball machine ideas and using it to tell the story of creation.
I see something familiar in there that's going to be in the show.
So
Can you tell us a
I
little bit
think you can
more
see it in the
about the
background
head
here.
that will be in the show?
But I've been having fun playing around with 3D printing, and so I was able to 3D print that head. And so you can see all these different color gumballs over here too. So spoiler alert, it's going to be very fun to see people eating the ideas out of this head.
I love.
I think for now it'll just be a fun
at the show, or is that
thing at the show. I don't know what I will do with it. I don't know much about the market for 3D printed objects.
Cool, I love it.
One. Bryan, any particular you want me to pull up?
I think all of them kind of have a story behind them.
Right now. I think I
Thanks.
love Tangled. Where's Tangled?
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I love Tangled. Tangled is very, very popular. I have it playing in my house,
So
and everybody always comments on Tangled.
Early in my
It's wait for the
NFT
animation to
career, I
pop in.
used a lot of these kind of recurring symbols. And some of them are clouds, some of them are diamonds, some of them are wires. And so the wires to me represent the connections we have with each other. And so for this piece, it kind of represents this idea of we're meeting all these people all the time in this space, and it all becomes very jumbled. And then you start to lose connections with them over time, and then you kind of go through these waves, especially with like these NFT conventions and like all these type of things we go to. All of a sudden, you're surrounded by like 50 people all the time, and you see them everywhere you go. And then eventually, people start to fade away, and so yeah, this piece is like a very loose interpretation of that concept of like connections intertwining and untangling. And it was fun. I got to do it for the Super Rare Gallery in New York City. And so it was, I built it with the idea that people would take photos in front of it and have it on a big screen. So I think it's going to be really cool to see that at the Black Dove Gallery on an even bigger screen.
Awesome. And you're looking to make
I think so. I'm
mixed
hoping to have it be a
digital
little
and live experience with that
4D,
piece, right?
I guess is the word. Yeah, Birdline. So this is one of my new pieces. This one's going to be for the Black Dove ecosystem.
Well, now we're showing bird lines.
I made 3 new pieces that I think, for me, would just be fun windows into a world. Because a lot of times I look at screens as windows. And so these 3 pieces all, again, bring in this idea of wires, but kind of in a more playful way that work in, I don't know how to describe it yet. I'm still wrapping my mind around, like, I don't have a name for this piece yet. I got to come up with one. Bird lines might be the final name, but I don't know. But I just like this idea of like, if I was to have something in my living room, what would be a fun kind of background image that takes me out, like extends the room into another world to a degree. And so these pieces were a mix of hand-drawn animation, digital animation, and then I included AI to create the cloud. So these 3 pieces also have an AI element to them. So I think, again, it ties in a bunch of these kind of recurring images, but in a less serious way than some of my past pieces. It's much more playful and fun.
I do think that I saw you playing around with
So
AI,
I
not
think AI has
necessarily in
been
the
a
works
part of my
here. But
work
have you been playing around with AI?
Since 2021. I did a collaboration with Karin 4D, who's a wonderful AI artist, and we did a project where we fed it thousands of my images and artworks, and then it spit out a bunch of artwork back. And then I took that and I added layers of animation on top of it. And so I've always found AI as an interesting way to create this like in-between layer. I've never really done projects where I just sell outputs from Midjourney or anything, but I do think it's a great way to create interesting assets that are, kind of in the same way that I love generative art. I like to be surprised by the process sometimes. When you control every step of it, it can get a little boring. But if you allow, these systems to surprise you, it kind of pulls you in different directions creatively. Yes. Yeah, I think
Interesting conversation.
That's one of the fun parts about the space, even with generative art too. When I did art blocks, for instance, I had no idea what the outputs would 100% look like, and there's something really exciting about that. It's it kind of gives you that same feeling of stage fright, of you don't know what's going to happen in the moment.
Elise, you were saying?
I love the feeling of opening up something new from something that you've created, like seeing something else's take on what you've done. There's some feeling of like letting go in it that I think is really interesting, and I wanted to see also where you kind of gain your inspiration from? Are you pulling any inspiration from, your favorite artists or even literature? You seem to have really emotionally intensive pieces that have a lot of really interesting thought to them and are very well thought out. And I can see, like, now what you're talking about, it means so much more than me just seeing the piece, really hearing it from you. I think Tangled is a really interesting piece when you talk about it like that.
No,
And where
I
do you
usually
find like
starts with
these,
sketches.
introspective kind of
Sometimes
ideas?
it starts with
From?
the concept, or sometimes it starts with just a doodle. Like the pieces making for this Black Dove show, the telephone wires, that started with the sketch, and then this idea of this birds aspect. Again, that's a reoccurring theme in my work, dating back to 2020. There's something really fun about nature, especially in this like such a digital world we live in. So I'm always kind of have fun juxtaposing this technology with nature and stuff. But in terms of inspirations, I would say I'm always inspired by animators. Like Don Hertzfeld's always been a big inspiration. The fact that he was able to, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he basically got nominated for an Oscar making a film with stick figures. And he was able to tell like profound, deep, emotional stories with the simplest of forms and like the goofiest imagery. I've always been a fan of that. And then I've been a fan of, the pop artists like Keith Haring, the fact that he was able to again tell stories with simple imagery, but also navigate the art world in a way that appealed to both the high-end fine art, but also the low-end commercial art. And I think there's something really interesting about that, of like the archetypes of artists should be more broken versus living in all these different areas. I think it's funny. It goes back to this basic feeling of jack of all trades. Like why should I be in one lane when I can play in all of them?
Totally.
It's very deceiving, Brian, because in fact, the color palettes and subject matters that you bring make you
Yeah.
feel sort of warm and somewhat you let your guard down because it is a
Yeah.
little cartoonesque, right?
Yeah. Well,
And then you sort of hit us with
there's a
this
few
deep
projects where
concept
I kind of
hidden within
talked
inside it,
about that
right? So like
aspect more. There
it
was one I
disarms
did
me
for
a little
Nifty
bit, to
called
be honest.
Tragic Pop, which is my love of pop songs about tragedy, if that makes sense. So there's like songs that there's like, classic songs from the 50s where it'd be like a very catchy song about someone dying in a car wreck. There's something really interesting about that like gets you like dancing, having fun. You don't really even think about the fact that it's like this whole emotional roller coaster. And yeah, I think there was that. And then I did one called Betty's Notebook, which I believe we'll have at the show as well. And that was, again, a very heavy story about a woman who believed she heard the distress calls of Amelia Earhart on her radio in Florida, and spent years. She wrote down what she heard. Some of it was corroborated in a way that makes people think she actually might have heard it bouncing off the stratosphere in some way. And she spent years with no one believing her. And so it's this really kind of double tragedy story. And then how do I wrap that into this like visually appealing thing? And I used sketches from her books and like her words and lyrics and all these ways to make this very kind of flourishy, ornate, colorful, beautiful image. Again, to draw people in a way that doesn't make them go, I don't want to listen to that. That sounds horrible, And so it's always this kind of like, how do you bring them in? And sometimes people don't want to dive that deep into the emotional thing,
Yeah.
and they just want something fun to look at. And so I think it's a nice way of being able to give something for everybody. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like a happy view of hard conversations.
So, Elise, you and Brian have been working on the upcoming show together.
Yep.
What do we have planned?
Well, today we were finalizing where items are going to be going in the space. It's going to be from what Brian told me today, I'll let him take over in a second, a really amazing retrospective experience in the back of his older pieces, and
I think
front,
of
it's
the
going to
collection.
be
I think
really a
skylines make
new,
sense
like with
because
those
there's
newer
lines and there's
pieces, like
sky.
birds.
But I'll work on the pieces names next.
What was the name that you wanted to call it, Bryan?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a great room of people. I can already imagine the conversations are going to be wonderful. And yeah, I'm so excited. Again, it's going to be showing my work on all sorts of mediums, whether it's this, physical prints or digital displays, or even an old-timey radio that's been retrofitted with future technology. So I think there's something really exciting about all that. And yeah, there'll be lots of little fun trinkets for people to collect as well. Oh yeah, it's 100 prints. Yeah.
Could you show us those only 50 prints that you printed out?
It's
I don't think Marc has seen them yet.
Piece,
So,
single edition. But then each one is also stamped with the authentic stamp.
Divide it. So the first,
so signed and numbered.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited to hand those out. And I put them in this nice plastic so that people don't bend it in their pockets.
Awesome. I love collecting things like that.
Oh,
yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, let's see. I can point out some things. I got some skateboards from Otherworld and Die with the Most Likes. I got this Creature World from Dan Cole. This Bitcoin sign is from A Lot of Money. That's an Akaitsa piece. Jason Naylor. It's looking like over here I got Emily Z. There's Killer Acid print somewhere over here. There's a Alien Queen. Yeah, I'm just as much of a collector as I am an artist. So I was saying before this, it'd be fun to look back on my interviews I've done over the years and see the space behind me get more cluttered with art. A favorite artist I collect? Yeah, I would say Sarah Zucker. I love collecting her work.
Do you have a favorite?
Thinking about like who I have a lot of. Osinachi, I'm a big fan of. Coldy, I'm a big fan of. Matt Kane, I think he does really incredible work. I'm listing off a lot of OGs right now, but yeah, I think that's the fun part of that space is like every day I'm discovering a new artist that I find interesting, and we're all just kind of learning from each other at the same time. I don't know, something like a couple thousand probably.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You're actually a big collector, Bryan. Let's not underestimate this. How many NFTs do you own?
Yeah. Well, Coldy was smart enough to be in the space when all the NFTs were like $5.
You have a great collection.
Made it a lot easier for him.
Coldy, I think, is
he was
the biggest. So I think it's like 7,000.
He was very inspiring because he was a part of this club that I've never reached, which is the 100 Club. Which is people that have minted 100 NFTs on Super Rare and collected 100 NFTs on Super Rare. And at this point, I haven't minted enough. I think I'm at like 35 minted, and I've probably collected like 50 Super Rare one of them. So I got a ways to go to catch up to him. But him and Sarah and again, A Lot of Money, like all these people were so supportive in collecting artists early on. And it was very clear to me, like, when you sell a piece of art in this space, take a portion of that and start buying other artists because it's just smart investing, NFA, not financial advice. But it builds, it's not only a fun way to be a part of other artists' journeys, but
smart investing,
it's also,
keeps the ecosystem cranking.
It's I want to say a lottery ticket or something, but it's a chance at being your own museum in the future. Yeah, so Unit London, very cool gallery.
Totally.
And
tell us your experience
they're more of a traditional
being in
gallery.
Unit London.
I was one of their first attempts at kind of this NFT show. But the fun part about it was doing this print aspect, which is something I haven't done in the space yet. I mean, I've done prints prior to NFTs, but I haven't really done an NFT with a physical pair. And so the interesting aspect of this was that the animation is an NFT and everybody owns that same NFT, but every print is a different frame from the NFT. So every print is its own unique one of one in a cool way. And so that was a fun way of doing it, where it kind of creates a very special bond around the physical piece while having the NFT be this kind of larger, more animated thing. Memory loss, yeah. Again, fun on the outside, very tragic on the inside. It's all about death and how we're
memory
remembered.
Loss. Great, I love it. I like a reoccurring. That's funny. Where do you see the digital art market going in the future? Is that what you're going to ask, Marc?
Actually, I was going to tell you about a conversation we had. I like your conversation also. One of the things that struck me in spending time with Bryan is that the ideas are very linear. He's got such a witty sense of humor that I think it would be interesting to just talk about when we're all together, this concept of a story that takes place over a period of time, not necessarily generative, but our clients, one of the things that we found with our clients, Bryan, is that they set the canvases to be one new work of art per day. So they put it on a timer, they take a collection, we're adding curators to our team now. And so the curators will create a collection, and then every day as a collector, you have a canvas up, you have a new work of art. And so, if you remember, I had mentioned to you that, you do remind me a lot of a cartoonist, of a satirist from the old newspaper days.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I sort of think about, especially
and
with
what
the
you brought to my
animation,
mind
which
with
is now
that
possible.
Is like growing up, I had the Far Side comic, is that 365-day calendar.
Some, the Bryan Brinkman.
So it's kind of like having a calendar piece. Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always been a little apprehensive.
You're the modern guy who I look to give me laughs.
I have a big comedy background. I do a comedy show in Brooklyn. If anybody's in Brooklyn, come see me at Union Hall. I do a show called Picture This, where I live draw to stand-up comedy. But I've always been apprehensive to mint jokes, just because I worry that comedy doesn't age well. It's usually only funny in that moment of reference. It's like no one's going to go watch a monologue from Johnny Carson and be like, oh. And so I think that's always the tricky part for me, is that comedy. Yeah, it's the same feeling when I watch like a comedy special recorded. It's not the same energy as being in the room. You need that tension and that freshness. But maybe there's something I can, but that's I use my Twitter as that comedy outlet in a way that isn't so permanent.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, people are still discovering it, and frankly, we're still discovering sort of what the conversation is between artist and collector, because unlike traditional artwork, you can deliver new artwork instantly now, right? Artwork comes up and then it goes out, and so collectors are like, cool, I'm looking at something that's new, and so the conversation, the timeline from creation to experience is now down to, zero, essentially, where it used to be years, right? I mean, artwork could be created in some.
I do. I really love time-based art, so I think there's definitely something
gallery
there.
Or the art fair, the museum.
It's just a matter of figuring out what the interesting
so it's like,
angle
that's a very
of it is.
interesting
I would say if there's one artist in the space that I do think is fusing comedy with art, it would be this guy with the most likes. who again his art is so it's like post irony sarcasm or something. I don't know. It's like it's hard to describe, but it's so weird and avant garde. But he's like the closest person I can see to like being a comedian and making stuff that will live longer than a joke, because it's like it's commentary on consumerism in a way. So it's very strange. But I don't know if I could pivot to that kind of nihilism. Yeah.
Right. Nah, we'll start playing. Nah, I wouldn't.
Totally.
Your style is your style, that's for sure. Just curious about picking it and seeing, just exploring this new medium. I just think we're obviously at the dawn of this new medium, right? So, whatever we've done over the last few years as an industry, we're just beginning, right? It's going to
I've been a
continue
fan
to
of
push
seeing
the edge of everything because the tools are
what do I want to tell
evolving
my collector audience?
so quickly right now.
Oh
Whether it's
boy.
art blocks or other generative tools that are happening, or just the new technologies that are
next
coming.
piece. Well, when this will air in the next week, right?
It's going to be. Who knows?
So my next piece.
What do you want to tell
next
your
week with
collector audience,
AOTM, which is a wonderful platform.
What's the big idea?
It'll be a one-of-one auction next week, which is the first week of October. And that piece is again playing on nostalgia and fun, and it's this penguin toy that represents the crypto market cycles of us going up and making money and then all crashing together. And so again, it's fun and playful, but also a commentary on the space in a way that I hope people don't get upset about. And then, I'm really excited about Black Dove putting out these pieces. What I think is interesting about the concept of Black Dove is I've always been apprehensive to do like an open edition NFT that might like dilute my supply in a way that like affects things across the board. But here I can do essentially an open edition in a way that lives on its own, allows me to put out art that's accessible to everybody without it competing in this way with all my other stuff, which I kind of appreciate this interesting angle to it. So I'm excited to see how that goes.
That's great.
We're more than thrilled to have you here, and our audience has an almost insatiable appetite for new information, right? And that's what we see across the board, is that there's three tiers. Once a collector gets a digital art installation, a canvas in their home or the app on their television, what we hear from our collectors on a regular basis is that it's the first time that they've ever been able to have easy access to art, right? We can get books easy, we can get music easy. We've never had access to art. And so I think there's definitely a balance that we're all moving to between ownership and access. We've got some exciting things, as you know, that we're working on right now to try and bridge that gap. But I'm excited for you to get
everything's better, bigger. If we've learned anything from the art museums,
feedback where people are contemplating your work in their spaces in a physicality, right? Versus, nothing against having it in your wallet, that's fine. But I know because I've got you in my home.
No, I think it's 100% true. If I make this image
true
10 feet taller, I can sell it for 100,000 times more.
On Twitter, following
I think
him,
there's just like
I'm always like,
there's a value to
was that
size,
a joke? I don't
especially
even I have to ask
in the New York
him,
area,
am I
where people
supposed
have
to
big
laugh
walls
at
I
that?
need to fill.
I'm not 100% sure.
And so
he always gets me. He always
no,
gets
I think I had a thought, and now I'm losing it. No, I think what you're talking about goes back to what we were discussing earlier about this need, like, want to collect. I think it's a human, nature to collect, but the biggest part of it is the show and tell. It's like we were taught show and tell early on as kids, and we want to get something and then say, look at this cool thing I have. And I think what you guys are building is that a way for people to do that more effectively than they can when they are like sorting through their OpenSea and trying to find all this stuff. So it's that again, that that's the core of why I collect, because I want to tell people, look what I got, you know. So fun to share.
Artist stories. Yeah. Artist stories. And that's why the podcast is so important, right? Because when people have your artwork on the wall, they will probably, like, look, I've had Tangled on my wall, did not know the story behind it.
Yeah.
Right. And so now learning that story is so important to me, because I love you and I love telling the story of how we met, and I love telling about you. Right. But now I get to tell the context of that piece when I'm touring somebody in my home.
I
And
agree.
like, that's why we're doing this podcast, because
That's always
people
the
get to meet you and
challenge
people
for
get
me
to learn.
personally,
And,
is that
and that's the
some
power
people
of
are like,
social
tell me
media.
what
It's
it
the
means,
power
and
of
then some
this
people are like,
concept of
don't
art.
tell
They're
me
going
what
to be
it
like,
means. And so I'm
it's
always like,
amazing. I
I'm
want
gonna
to
ride
put
this
that on my
fine line
wall
of like,
today. And
if you want to seek out
it's a
more
whole
info,
new
I'll give it, but I
generation.
don't
It's very,
necessarily
very,
want to
very
like
exciting.
tell you how to perceive
Very,
these
very
things as well. I don't know. I've heard it from both sides of the collector spectrum. Some people want to see themselves in the work and they don't want to impose your views on it.
Yeah. Totally.
So Elise, why don't you want to end us with a promo for the exhibition?
Yeah, everybody, you got to come to the NFT gallery on October 6th
I'll
from
be there.
5 p.m. to 12 a.m. There's going to be champagne giveaways, some little freebies, incredible art and installations, an amazing staff that the NFT gallery has. Marc will be there. I might be there, but Marc will 100% be there. Very excited because the NFT gallery, yeah, Bryan will be there, you know, and gallery is truly amazing. They run all of their canvases off Blackdove, off our software. They're now our screen partner as well, and they have just been incredibly accommodating and very excited to get this launch and started. We have a ton of reservations, and just more and more every single day coming through our ticketing process or on Eventbrite. So if you haven't gotten your tickets, go to our Twitter and go to our link tree in the bio. It's the first link right there. If you are here listening to this podcast that comes out October 5th, the day before the show, and just very excited to see all the content
real
from
quick,
it,
I just want
and
to
your
point out,
smile and meeting a whole bunch of people that
a
are
couple
looking
days
forward
ago,
to
I was
collecting
looking
your
back,
art. So thank you
and
very
3
much
years
for
ago,
doing
I
this
did a
with us.
gallery show
You're an
in Crypto
amazing
Voxels
person
where I had all these
and
avatars
artist,
come and
but
look at my
person
art in a
first,
virtual
it's been a
world.
pleasure to
And then
know who
to
you are
make that
and the
realization
true
that 3
meanings
years later
behind
I'm
your art.
having a real life
And I hope that
version of
everybody
that
else has enjoyed this too.
feels like such a leap forward, and I'm very proud and I'm very thankful to be a part of this. Thank you. Thank you.
We are so proud to have you, and we're thrilled to be able to offer this exhibition for you. We're going to continue doing it, but this is our first with you, and so we're excited to launch with you as well, Bryan. All right, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you all tuning in. My name is Marc Billings with my co-host Elise Trethwick and artist Bryan Brinkman. Thank you so much, everybody.